In this video, I'll show you how to fix some of the most common issues you'll likely run into in After Effects. If you have a layer selected, but you don't see the selection in the composition viewer, go up to View and then make sure Show Layer Controls is checked. It's still not showing the selection around the shape itself, and to see that, you need to toggle this button on. If you have the position property of a layer animated, but you can't see the motion path when you select the layer, it's the same fix as the last issue. You just need to toggle on this button. By the way, the project file I'm using as an example is from my beginner After Effects course, so check that out if you want to learn After Effects more efficiently. If you're animating the position property of a layer and After Effects decides that the motion path is going to be curved but you want it to be straight, you can fix it. Just go up to the pen tool and click and hold to grab the Convert Vertex tool, then click the keyframe where the curved point is to get rid of the handles. And if you decide that you want those handles back to make a curved path, you can just click again with the Convert Vertex tool. For this animation, I want this point to be pointy, so I'm going to click to get rid of the handles, and I still have handles here, but if I didn't, I could click here to get rid of them or add them, and then I can just adjust the motion curve by dragging the handles. If you want the motion path to always be straight by default, you can go up to After Effects, Settings, and then Composition, and then check Default Spatial Interpolation to Linear. Now when you animate the position of any new layers, the motion path will be straight automatically. Here's what to do if you're getting some unwanted movement in between two keyframes with the same values. These two keyframes have the exact same value, but the shape is moving in between these two keyframes. The reason this can sometimes happen is if the spatial interpolation is not set to linear. Like you saw in the previous issue, After Effects tries to create a curved motion path, and this can create unwanted drift in between two keyframes that are the same value. There's a few ways you can fix this. On the first keyframe that has the same value as the next one, you can right-click it and choose Toggle Hold Keyframes. That way it holds this value until the next keyframe, so there's no way it can drift. Another option is that you can select the keyframes, right-click and choose Keyframe Interpolation, and set the spatial interpolation to linear. Now there's no unwanted drift between two keyframes with the same value. Another way you could fix this is to use the Convert Vertex tool to click on the keyframe to remove the handles on the motion path. If you have a layer that's not scaling or rotating from the point that you want it to, you need to adjust the anchor point. To do that, go up to the Pan Behind tool and then drag the anchor point into place. If you hold down Command or Control, it will snap to the edges or corners. All transformations will happen from the anchor point, which is now where I want it to be. If you want to center the anchor point in a layer, hold down Command or Control and double-click the Pan Behind tool. That brings up another issue that you might come across. If you look at the value for this layer, it's not 0, even though the anchor point is in the center of the layer, so you would expect it to be 0. The reason for this is because shape layers have two sets of transform properties and two anchor points. So if you look under transform, this anchor point has this value, but if you go underneath contents and then rectangle 1 and then transform rectangle 1, here is a whole nother set of transform properties, and this anchor point is set to 0, 0. This anchor point is just for this shape, so I could have this shape selected and then add additional shapes to this same layer. And then I have like rectangle 2, and then if I open this up, there's another set of transform properties that's just for this second rectangle. But I'm going to delete that because I don't want another rectangle. And the point here is that this position property is for the position of this rectangle relative to the layer. And notice how this anchor point is the exact same value as this position. If this bothers you, you can zero out the position and then also zero out the anchor point to fix these numbers. And if you don't want to deal with this and you don't want to have to center the anchor point every time you make a new shape layer, you can change the default by going to After Effects, Settings, and then Composition, and check Center Anchor Point in New Shape Layers. Now, whenever you create a new shape layer, no matter where it is on the composition, it'll center the anchor point and the anchor point for the entire layer, and the position and anchor point for just this shape will be zeroed out. If you have a layer where the position property is animated and you want to move the entire layer including the animation, click the word position to select the entire motion path. Then you can move the motion path in the composition viewer, or if you put your playhead over a keyframe, making sure that all keyframes are still selected, you can adjust the value. You can select multiple or all layers and align them using the Align panel. This dropdown lets you align the selected layers to the composition or relative to each other. If you have a few layers that you want to move all together and you want to make sure they maintain their positioning relative to each other, or they're already animated, here's how. First, create a new null. Then parent the layers you want to move to the null. Then move the null to move all the layers. You can delete the null when you're done. If you're trying to create a new shape layer, but it's making a mask, make sure that no layers are selected. Or if drawing out a shape makes a new shape within an existing shape layer, make sure no layers are selected. Then you can make a new shape on a new layer. If you're trying to draw a mask on a shape layer, but instead you keep getting another shape, toggle this button. Now the shape tool will create a mask. If you're looking for the roundness property on a rectangle to round the corners but you don't see it, that's probably because it's a bezier shape. There's two different types of shape layers in After Effects. Parametric shapes have properties that are specific to the shape, like roundness to round the corners, but bezier shapes are a path, so you can select individual points on the path to move them or animate them. Parametric shapes have to be created with the Shape tool, and bezier shapes can be created with the Pen tool. You can convert a parametric shape into a bezier shape by right-clicking where it says Path 1 and choosing Convert to Bezier Path, and now you can select the individual points on the path. You can't turn a bezier path into a parametric shape. If you want to animate the path property, but you're having trouble selecting individual points on the path instead of the entire path, what you need to do is click off of the layer so that it's not selected, and then double-click on the path. That way you can select the individual points on the path and move them individually. You can also do this by having all of the options toggled open and then selecting where it says Path 1. If you select where it says Path next to the stopwatch, it'll select all of the points on the path, so if you click to try to move one, it's going to move the entire path. So again, just click off so nothing is selected and then select where it says Path 1. And then you can move the individual points. If you're missing the bezier handles on a path, right-click it, go to Mask and Shape Path, and uncheck Roto Bezier. If you're missing layers in the timeline, but you know they exist because you can see them in the composition viewer, they probably have gotten shied. Click this button to reveal all the shied layers. If you want to hide layers on the timeline, they should have this icon, and then when you hit the shy guy, they'll disappear from view. If you set keyframes on a layer, but it's just popping in and you don't see any animation, you may have accidentally trimmed the layer. If I hit U on the keyboard, you can see that these keyframes happen before the layer starts. So I accidentally trimmed the layer by dragging with the double arrows instead of dragging the entire layer to where I want it. Compositions inside of other compositions work the same way. So for this stomata label, if I drag the start of the layer, you can see that now it's not going to be visible in this shaded area, but it is visible here. So again, if you want to trim the layer, you want to look for the double arrows, but if you want to actually adjust when the layer comes in, you want to drag from the middle so you move the entire layer along the timeline. If you want your trim path animation to look like this, but it's actually looking more like this, the problem is that you have a filled in shape instead of a path with only a stroke. You'll need to recreate the shape by tracing it with the Pen tool. Make sure that you have no fill and you have a stroke. Then add the trim path animation. If you render out your animation and it has a bunch of extra time at the end where nothing is happening, how do you get rid of that extra time? You could edit the duration of your composition by going to Composition, Composition Settings, and shorten the duration. If you render out your animation, but you're missing parts of the animation, like the beginning of this was cut off, it could be because you have the work area set. The work area is this gray bar at the top of the timeline, and you can set it by dragging the blue bookends. Only the work area gets rendered. If you're trying to play back your animation, but you keep getting this error that says After Effects error, cache preview needs 2 or more frames to play back. The problem is likely that your work area is set to only 1 frame, so drag the work area out so that you have more to preview. After Effects only plays the work area, so if the work area is set to only one frame, there's nothing to play back, and that's why you get that error. The keyboard shortcuts to set the work area are B for beginning and N for end. If you want to adjust or animate the opacity of a composition, but you're seeing some see-through overlapping layers, it's because continuously rasterize is turned on. But you may want that to be turned on so that the composition looks sharp and not pixelated. So the fix is that instead of animating this opacity property, go to the Effects and Presets panel and search for Transform. Then apply this transform effect to the nested comp. Then you can animate or adjust this opacity property while keeping the composition continuously rasterized with no weird see-through layers. If you want to find a composition in the project panel, even if you have an organized project, when the project is really big, sometimes this can still be a pain. But there's an easy way. Just right-click on the composition and choose Reveal in Project. You can also right-click on the tabs at the top of the timeline and choose Reveal Composition in Project to quickly find it that way. If you click this button or hit Tab, you can see a flowchart that shows the composition that you're in and the relative compositions that it's in and the compositions that are in it. If you can't see your animation, you probably accidentally clicked on an image or footage, which opens it in the composition viewer. To get back to your animation, just click the tab at the top of the composition viewer. If you can't put your playhead on a keyframe, like when you want to adjust the value of that keyframe, it means the keyframe is in between frames. You can quickly zoom into one frame increments on the timeline with the semicolon key. Then just move the keyframe onto a frame to fix this. The way that keyframes end up in between frames is when you select multiple keyframes, then hold Option or Alt to stretch or shrink the timing of them. If your timeline is super small, especially if you're on a small screen, it can be hard to work. Luckily, you can adjust how much space things take up. In the timeline, drag these little bars to adjust the space each column takes up. You can also hover in between panels, and when you see this icon, click and drag to adjust the size of each panel. If you have unused space here, you can drag from the panel name and place the panel in a highlighted area to rearrange. Then save your workspace so you don't have to adjust this in every new project. If you're missing options like mats in the timeline, use these buttons to toggle between options. If you still don't see the options you're looking for, right-click at the top of the columns and make sure the options you need are checked. If After Effects keeps freezing when you try to open a project, first force quit. Then turn on Caps Lock and double-click the project file to open it. You'll see this error message once After Effects opens, so then just turn off Caps Lock. If your animation is playing back too slowly, at first this is normal because it can take a second to preview every frame. If you don't see a green or blue bar on the timeline, After Effects is still processing those frames. You can see if your animation is playing back in real time in the info panel. Once the green or blue bar is there, it should be playing back in real time. If your animation is still playing back slower than you think it should, and there is a green or blue bar along the top of the timeline, check in the preview panel and make sure that the frame rate is set to the same frame rate as your composition. Or if it's set to auto, it will automatically match the frame rate of the comp. If you're having trouble with After Effects being slow in general, check out this video for tips. The quickest and easiest thing you can do to make previewing an animation faster is to reduce the resolution here. Tackling issues like this can be part of the learning process, but you can avoid a lot of them by learning After Effects the right way. I've taught motion design for over 7 years, and the thing I see most consistently with students who take a structured approach versus the YouTube tutorial path is speed. They get good faster and build the right habits from the start instead of having to break bad habits later. If you want to take the more direct route, I have a new beginner After Effects course. It covers fundamental animation skills, but also how to think like a motion designer. It includes 7 real-world projects that build into a final explainer animation. It's what I wish I had when I was starting out. You can learn more with the link in the description.